to this edition of Story Talkies from We-Storytellers. Story Talkies are conversations that matter. Today, our guest is Mr. Vikramjit Singh Sahaye, founder and CEO of hiringplug. Vikramjit is a serial entrepreneur and he has founded several companies as well as led several companies in FMCG, insurance, telecom, and the digital spaces. Vikramjit is passionate about HR technology and he drives cloud-based business models. He has successfully started and scaled digital businesses in recruitments, employee engagement, rewards, and recognition solutions. It's a pleasure to host you today, Vikramjit, to Story Talkies. And we look forward to some great insights on how communication and digital transformation is enabling the HR functions of today.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Swati. It's a pleasure being here.
While we were having our discussions, a lot of queries were going through my mind in relation to how HR is shaping up in present times when digital working, remote working has become the norm. And in these days and situations, what is your feeling? How important is it for employers to build a consistent voice inside out? For example, to employees or people whom you want to hire internally. So what, according to you, based on your experiences and insights, could be the key drivers in attracting great talent into an organization in these times?
So going back a little in time, I started working about 25 years ago, and we've actually moved our careers from a non-digital to a digital or a mostly digital medium today. And I've seen a lot of changes, especially in context of HR when we look at the workplace. So for the last few years, people have been talking about the future of work, of how things would be and how skills would change and all of those things. But I believe when COVID happened, the pandemic happened, and it hit worldwide, it really zipped through the entire future of work. So the future of work, so to speak, is happening now. A couple of things which are really prominent in the future of work are that people now, there is a distributed workforce. These are therefore very interesting times, and therefore the prominence of having communication over the digital medium is now really, really prominent. So what is happening is that I would say this is also a great leveler, because when you're a very large company, you can blow a lot of money in marketing into the mass communication, etc. But now, because you're a startup or you're a smaller company or you have the means which is digital, which is kind of democratizing communication around the world, you are kind of at par with each other. So the importance of communication, especially on the workplace, is really important. Number one, crisis management. So I believe communication in general about the workplace is really important. Leaders have no choice but to imbibe this communication. Communication has to be as transparent as possible and as truthful as possible. I believe the concept of inclusion at workplace is now even more stronger, and people need to talk to each other. And for instance, when COVID happened, a lot of people lost jobs. So leadership would come down and talk, have an open forum across a medium which otherwise wouldn't have been possible under a roof, and talk to people and say, look, we are going through a crisis. We need to cut salaries or we need to cut jobs. What do you say we do? So, I've seen a lot of companies where they've been open and transparent in their communication, have been able to really sail through well. So, I think in general, communication now holds even more importance than ever before.
Yes, that's something really one needs to think about. And diversity and inclusion, of course, doesn't just mean gender diversity. It will mean including specially abled and people from different orientation. So how is that happening in these times? How is inclusion becoming better in these times, as you commented? Can you share some insights on that? Yeah.
Absolutely. So in fact, it's a topic very close to my heart as well, and therefore my company. First of all, diversity is popularly understood as people, companies having more female presence. But diversity is not limited only to female or male ratio. As part of our company, we have a proposition. We are covering 8 forms of diversities, and I don't believe these are also enough. For instance, people who want to hire people who are coming from different social backgrounds or different religious backgrounds. There are people who should be hired who are coming after a career break. We have a lot of them, who want to resume their careers after a break. There are people, a lot of things are changing. So first and foremost, every company today, nobody is going to do anybody a favor by having more diverse population in their workforce, because there is a very clear business case. You make more money, you are better equipped to handle the market situations if you have a diverse workforce. There is a business case. Number two, and I would say one of the upsides of having a COVID pandemic is that people are able to hire people remotely, which really opens your bandwidth in terms of talent. For instance, if you have a very niche skill and it is not really available in your city, now you're open to people sitting anywhere in the world having those skills and working for you. So I believe the agenda of diversity with the forward-looking organizations has really moved forward. So, and I think one more important thing to say is that a lot of people talk about diversity, but it really needs to be done on ground. For instance, the first step is to measure diversity and then to also incentivize people, on diversity. For instance, we are in the talent acquisition business. We work with a lot of clients, and some of those people who are really serious will give a clear instruction, will give a special preference if you provide diverse candidates, and they will also incentivize you better if you're able to source better quality people. I believe that action is not happening everywhere across the board. Number two is that when people are in the company, it's good to talk about equality, but I believe equity is far more important. So equality is about giving the same status to everybody, but equity means how can you personalize and understand and recognize that everybody is different, and you give them appropriate support so they are able to all come at par. So I believe equity is more important and not only equality, and inclusion is of course very, very important. The other agenda, one more point I'd like to tell you about gender diversity. Companies in India are not equipped to manage transgender population in their workforce for 2-3 reasons. Number one, there is social stereotyping. So, it's very common that if you do have somebody from that segment, then people will form an opinion, they will gossip. So that sensitization needs to happen, that everybody is the same. Number two, the hiring which is based on merit is more important than where you come from. Number three, you look at the employee manuals. An employee manual will say that an employee can do this and he is allowed to do this. So we have to come out of our, so to say, verbiage which says he and she, because there are a lot of people who do not associate themselves with he or she, and their orientation is different. So we need to be really top down, culturally on ground, fit to be able to absorb and work with people across diversities. So, but yeah, with COVID happening and like the future of work happening, this is all accelerated. There is a business case and a lot of organizations are doing it.
Now that more and more companies and employees have become digitally adaptive, more than expected, how do you think digital transformation can take care of removing biases that we spoke about right now? You highlighted that organizations are not equipped to kind of, for example, handle a transgender population or the specially abled population, or even women coming back to the workforce after a break. In the physical form, they were definitely not equipped to do so. In the digital form, are they in a better position? How is that helping this case?
Very interesting. I believe technology is inevitable today. So even if you were a traditional company earlier, you today cannot do without technology in some form or manner. So when you look at the workspace, it all begins with the acquisition of talent and then management of talent. So when we begin with the acquisition of talent, technology is playing a major role. It is becoming an enabler. For example, a lot of people, including our own company, have the ability to allow and mask several indicators which will not reveal your gender. For example, it will not reveal your orientation. It will mask a lot of things which will hide your key indicators or characteristics. So as a hiring manager or an HR manager, you do not get access to them even to take care of your subconscious bias. So we understand conscious bias is where I know that this is not going to happen, and subconscious bias is the social stereotyping, which subconsciously we think, for instance, we look at somebody who has a lot of gray hair and we'll say he will not be able to match in my young population of workforce, so even the subconscious bias needs to be cut down, and technology is helping. Number two is there's a lot of advent about artificial intelligence. I believe that going forward and very, very soon, all companies who are using any form of technology will start using AI. Okay, now AI in talent acquisition is especially not fully there yet. There is still, there are examples of Amazon using AI, there are examples of Facebook using AI, and all of them did not do well and they had to switch it off. Why? Because what AI was doing and machine learning was doing, it was picking up patterns from the history of how the company was operating. So all those deficiencies also got amplified. So there is a lot of change required, but technology is definitely helping in terms of highlighting only merit and not the indicators about their backgrounds, until the time the person is hired. In fact, another point I would like to highlight is that there is also bias about people getting the right pay. I think as a fraternity, we need to come out of the fact that stop asking people what do you get paid today. We should match people to the role which is available and not worry about what they're currently getting paid. So, it is both a cultural change. It will impact a lot of finances in organizations. It will cut down a lot of discretionary negotiations. And I believe as a company, you'll be able to progress much better. There are laws in certain states in America which prohibit you to do all these things today, but I believe these need to go up significantly.
There are several drivers that kind of encourage an individual to work in an organization, join in an organization, or aspire in an organization. Pay is one of them, and the job role is one of them. There are many other things like growth, etc. We have seen that there's one more factor, which is who are we going to end up working with? Who are going to be my colleagues? Who are going to be my bosses or my subordinates? And what am I going to be able to learn from them? So we feel that this is a very, very important key driver. What is your comment on that? How much does that play a role when a candidate is selecting an organization?
Yeah, very good question again. So if you really look at why people leave an organization, okay, let's look at that. We would always think, if we have not read a research document, we will think it is about the pay. But pay actually comes down at number 4 or number 5 as a reason. So the primary reason, even if you look at Gallup surveys all over the world, which are anonymous surveys and very credible, the primary reason is that people leave their managers and not the companies. Okay, and one other reason is that as managers, there is a lot of responsibility to grow your people, to develop your people, to achieve your numbers. So not everybody is capable of doing that unless there is proper mentorship in a company. For instance, the culture in our company, although we are not very large as a team, but the culture is that let us all do what we are supposed to do. If the results still don't happen, then it is a company, it is a collective issue. It is not an individual issue. But if you fail to do what you're supposed to do, then it is an individual issue. So I think that kind of philosophy gives a lot of flexibility to people for working independently and going for a common goal. So, I believe the so-called manager or whoever you report to has a responsibility to play a fair role. In terms of culture, one should not go by hierarchies. Do not depend on the manager alone to set it. We should, for cultural reasons and for issues regarding governance and all those things, we should cut across hierarchies and just talk to anybody you want to. And people make mistakes, but having a proper redressal mechanism is again very, very important. So, so coming back to your question, what does a candidate look? A candidate will like is no different from a person who's wanting to book a hotel. You would like to read and know from anybody who says what their experience has been, right? So for instance, I would typically go to a TripAdvisor and read the latest comments and it would say, okay, my bathroom was stinking, so I know that this is real. So similarly, I believe for a company, it is how your other employees are able to evangelize about your work culture. That is the real and the ultimate thing that makes it work. Everything else is employee branding. You can spend millions of money, amount of dollars in terms of branding about your thing, but ultimately, if people take references, and references have to work. So you have to genuinely be working towards improving the culture of the organization.
Pre-COVID, we have seen that many companies were spending a lot of money on making their employees happy and calling it employee engagement. Of course, I commend their efforts, but how does real employee engagement work when the culture of appeasement, for example, now that everybody is working online and away, and even group meetings are a thing of the past at the moment, how does one work with real employee engagement?
So my previous startup, which was pretty successful, was in the area of employee engagement and digital employee engagement. So I will tell you a couple of things which I believe are very strong. Irrespective of the medium, offline or online, the fundamental of having a good engaged employee is personalization. You need to map the aspiration of that employee to the aspiration of the organization in a way that everybody feels happy doing what they're doing. If you have Valentine's Day and you have balloons in office and you have little hearts being given away, that is not engagement. It is a tactical thing which will generally improve the mood for a moment, but that is not real engagement. And a lot of people mistaken that to be the engagement. Holy parties, etc. That is not real engagement. The real engagement is when you actually look at and map the aspiration. So I'll give you an anecdote from my previous organization. A very large leading financial company in India had an issue with regards to their Gallup scores, with Gallup engagement scores. And Gallup is an organization which is quite credible, picks up anonymous data at every level and then compares and benchmarks to your department, your company, your industry, and everything else, right? So the problem statement was that we are spending a lot of money and yet the engagement levels are down. So how do we get this sorted? So, we have done a little bit of probe and we did some individual surveys. I had myself gone out and met a lot of people. Now, a couple of things I'll tell you is that, it was different for people. People in the BPO strata. BPOs are typically segments where they're youngsters who are coming into at odd hours and making phone calls one after another. All they wanted was half an hour extra lunchtime. That is all. It is not about rewards. It's not about parties. They just wanted half an hour more during lunch when they're logging in and logging out, so they're able to bond with other people, because otherwise on calls you're not able to. Similarly, there were people who did 30 years, 35 years in service in a company, and I'm talking about a very large company. What really mattered to them was not the money or the watch that they're given, on completing a yearly milestone. What really mattered to them was that, their family was brought and recognized, and they were told that how well the family, as a family, you've supported for this individual to work better in our company and how it meets the culture. That made more sense. Similarly, a person who was extremely well paid, and this is the last one I'll cover, of course, there were five of them, was that extremely well paid, so money held no value. So there were two aspirations that came out. One, that they wanted recognition in their own sector. Remember, this is financial services, highly regulated, but the person wanted some bit of recognition within their own community that, this person is doing well, etc., with the help of the company. Number two, somebody wanted to do a course in Harvard University by getting a paid 2 months off to do a course. So those are the aspirations. We should stop treating everybody the same. If we say, okay, we are having a party for everyone, that is tactical, it is not engagement. If you are able to map, if I tell you that if you are able to do these numbers, the company will be closer to achieving its purpose, and I will make sure that the house you wanted to get, you'll get closer to getting it done, right? So if you're able to map the individual requirement to the overall objective of the company, no matter offline or online, that's when the engagement really happens. Otherwise, it's all a matter of depending on your manager and the initiatives the manager will take.
The way you have explained it, Vikram, looks like in these times when people are working online and from home, individual engagement is far more possible than when they were working in groups together in the office, where uh, you know group initiatives were being taken. So on that note, thank you so much for joining us and participating in this conversation. Story Talkies is all about conversations that matter, and we look forward to seeing you again sometime soon to discuss more in-depth topics, probably in another edition of Story Talkies. Thank you, Vikram, for joining us.
Thank you so much, team. It's been a real pleasure being here. And I'm so happy that we are picking up topics which really matter the workforce, especially in the current times. Thank you so much. I would love to be back. Thank you.